the period was like 2014, 2015. I remember I came on the trip to the US, and I had been going through university a lot at the time, and I hadn't skated as much. And when I came here, it was so fun. I was like reconnecting with so many friends that I hadn't seen for so long, and I skated the most that I had in ages. It was almost like 3 months or something. Mm-hmm. So I came back so invigorated, and I remember feeling like when I would go skating, I felt at that point no pressure to skate a spot if I didn't feel comfortable doing it, or also just wanting to do something there. I felt like, because I feel like growing up, particularly in like the 18 to like 20 sort of period where I started filming like for, a video part and that stuff, and you really get into that idea of like, oh, I got to do tricks at, every spot. And, I kind of sort of lost that inhibition to do that. And I was okay with it. I was fine to be able to, I felt it didn't give me any like, because I feel like there's anxiety that's associated with that. Like if you go somewhere and you 100%. Feel like you have to perform at every spot. 100%. And like maybe even like feeling as well, like because there was, in my early 20s, I started skating for Valo, like in Australia. Mm-hmm. And there was that like pressure I put on myself to like, I have to skate everything because, like I'm on this platform and people see me and stuff. But like I said, about 2015, I just started really to think like, it's okay. Like if I don't skate the spot, that's fine. Mm-hmm. Like I'll find something that's else. Like happy to me. Yeah. And I just took that approach kind of like continually there and after, and like tricks and clips just started coming. Like as in they just started happening, and like like zigzag and main dish was like the first footage that came out since Seven Rats, and like that was just fun, and it was very easy getting that. And then I remember I was like, oh, I want to maybe like. It'd be cool to film a part, and Dom asked me to be a part of chapter 2, and it was just like the same sort of process. I kept like just going out and skating, and instead of like thinking about skating every kind of spot, I sort of like left it open to basically you spoke about it with Gav, because Gav, like me and Gav are like best friends, and we spoke about this Gav Drum to anyone who's listening. Gav Drum. Yeah. Hello, Gav. So Gav has, that philosophy where he goes to a spot and allows like the spot to speak to him. Yeah. And he, instead of like, what do I force on the spot? What's the spot telling me to do? Mm-hmm. So I kind of like inherited a bit of that as well. And I found that like I was more interested in seeing what like the spot is going to bring out to me. And I kind of kept that sort of approach going. And one of the things I realized out of like the way I was skating is that I was inherently forming like choreography. It was less about the individual tricks, as going to a spot and doing like a true spin, fish brain down a handrail. It was more about how I incorporated these different tricks together over, and how you moved through a space. And then like maybe they're not always like the hardest of tricks, maybe they're like just top soles or they're sweat stance or fish brains or whatever. But I was more interested in how I like moved through a space and like incorporate all these things together.
And like the rhythm and all that.
Yeah. And sort of just also because like growing up skating and studying skating, like watching so many skate videos and, just being like a scholar of aggressive skating is that like, I know how like, what's done, so to speak. And it was like I was always more interested. I started to become more interested in like, well, how can you like, how can you challenge what has already been done, And another thing that I always hated, which is exactly the same way as which comes down to the fashion, is like you can't dress like that, or you can't express yourself like this. In skating, I find it really sort of frustrating in a way that I grew up with these like inherent rules. Like you can't do that. Like you can't do these tricks. You have to do these tricks this way. And I feel like they're just like, they're sort of limiting to the possibilities of expression. And I developed the appreciation that like you can do any trick. It's how you do it, not what the trick is. And so with that, I found like more interest in exploring ways in which to challenge how you would approach a spot. Maybe it's like, it's not just like the trick that you do, but how you like move through that space. And instead of going, linear, but like straight and then down, maybe you go to the side and then back this way. And it's like, becomes like this, like if you were to draw like the line or however you go down, it like creates its own kind of form as opposed to like the standard kind of thing. But I feel like going to skates...
I really like that mentality.
Yeah. Sagona was like that too, wasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he had like a lot of that.
Yeah,
those
he
ideas.
focused a lot on like in between the tricks. Like the in between
Yeah.
tricks were the tricks that made it. Like it wasn't just the
and that's
main
it's
thing.
not the trick. It's the
It's the in between stuff.
it's
yeah.
the whole start to finish.
Yeah.
I remember he said that in I think it was the One magazine interview he had, that you could like take any still frame of a video and it's like it should all look really good.
Oh shit.
You know, in some form.
Yeah. It's a good way to put it.
Yeah, I it's like that just approach is just like how I find like the most fun out of skating, you know, and like every so often I'll go to a normal rail and like, yeah, I'll try some tricks I haven't done, you know, in a while. Like I'll, you know, and like that is also satisfying, you know, just doing regular basic tricks because that's what I grew up doing. But I do find the most like fun when I'm like going out and not having like any kind of idea of how I want to skate something and just sort of finding something in what's in my environment.
I totally think that point right there is actually like similar to like, you know, at the end of Brain Fear Gone, like Dustin and Shane are talking, and he's like, yeah, you can go get crazy if you want, and he's like, but you could also get weird, get like this, that, and it's just like the possibilities like could be explored. And I like the choreography idea, like like, you know, not about it being solely about the trick, because at least in our era and how we grew up in New York, like we were like that was totally, it was about the trick. Like, you know, we used to battle skate and everything, like be like, yo, it's about doing the best trick and all that. And
you're also good at it.
Well, you know, it was like I think the natural progression from being a part of something at like such an early point, like and you had been through that too. But like it's cool to see it have like grown to so many possibilities and like this as well, because that's like really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just like being open to possibilities and just like also looking at how other people are doing things, you know, and just being observant and like, it's in the end, it's just like finding things what you find fun in skating, you know, like no one has to skate exactly the same and no one should. You should just like skate and experiment. And I guess this is evident. I didn't always skate this way. It's just developed into this is how I like skating like right now, you know, and this is how I find the most fun. You know, like when I was 15, I had a blast when we'd go to these flat rails and just do 3 switch ups and stuff, you know. So I think like if you just skate and you just enjoy it and just like constantly, you know, try challenge yourself every time, you know, like do something a little bit different.
Or like you said, make it fun, because like, you know, like the skating the rail is cool and it's like, but there's definitely like an anxiety like to it too, but it's like where there's value in it for sure. But then just like, you know, don't forget to have fun. You know, you're on got wheels on your feet, boy. Like, you know, carve around.
I think the fun is the best way to describe, especially your skating itself, because you could tell that you have fun when you're skating when you watch it. I feel like that's a good way to describe the way you skate, especially your chapter 2 section.
Yeah,
like that section, obviously it's different than everyone else's section, but like it starts off and you immediately like have a nice laugh with the intro clip, and it's like, okay, this is the kind of like vibe you're getting. And your whole section, like aside from other sections that you had as well, but everything you could tell you're having so much fun skating, and it really like brightens the mood. And that's that part of the video. It's I'm just using chapter 2 as an example because you just mentioned it, but that was like the part in the video where you could tell, like you could like, oh, this is like really, like you have a smile on your face when you're watching it. Other sections might motivate you, like, oh, this is crazy, I want to go out and try this now. And your section's like, wow, this was just really enjoyable to watch.
Oh, I'm glad it translates.
And it definitely is that way. And you keep saying fun when you describe skating, and that's like 100% translate. Like I can see that from an outsider eye, that it translates instantly. I
will say this, I do still think that skating, for me, there's kind of like when you go to like do tricks and go out to like, you know, because I feel like I as much as I'm talking about fun and I do really like it, I take it seriously.
Yeah, no.
So
totally,
like when I do find a trick, sometimes I think inherently there's this like dichotomy between a love and hate thing in skating. Because you know when you're like, we've all experienced it, you're like in the midst of a trick and it's agonizing, you can't get it, and like I get so much anxiety about like just doing the trick. I'm like, I want this over with now. You know, like anything could happen. I could fall really badly or whatever, and I just like I just want to do it. I want to get it perfect how I want to do it, and like. Yeah, it's like I always have to come back to remind myself in those moments of like, okay, just, you know, just do it casual, you know, like try to make the fun out of the whole thing. But there is always, for me, because I have anxiety about like when I go to do tricks, and I'm inherently a scaredy cat, like with anything that I do in skating. But I have a very methodical kind of process to like get myself to do the tricks that I do. It's like I'll go there, I'll kind of figure it out. You know, I might just like play around with this or that. And when I feel comfortable enough, like I'll speak to whoever, and at least if this is for filming, I'll speak to whoever. I'm like, okay, I think I'm ready to do this.